Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Leadership Podcast. I have a dear friend with me today, Jenn Mason. Jenn Mason is a national board certified health and wellness coach with a master's degree in integrative medicine and health science from Saybrook University and a master's degree in women's health from Suffolk University. Oh my goodness, Jenn, you A, love school, and B, what cool things to have degrees in. She specializes in working with heart-centered humans experiencing high levels of stress and overwhelm, which is something we're going to dive in today. She has worked with thousands of people who seek an integrative and culturally sensitive approach to health and well-being, whether in a group setting or in one-on-one sessions. Jenn helps her clients establish daily well-being practices that bring their greater calm, clarity, and confidence to their lives while supporting the health of their mind, body, and spirit. Some modalities she uses to support her clients include somatic yin yoga, restorative yoga, hypnotherapy, mindfulness, and Mayan abdominal massage. And if you're wondering what the heck that is, do not worry because we're going to talk about it in today's episode. Jenn, you are an incredible inspiration. You've been an amazing support to me in my life. I get so much just from being able to see you online, learn from you. And for the people who aren't as familiar, if you could share a little bit about your background and your story, I would love to hear from you in your own words.
Thank you so much, Amber, for the intro and for having me. Yes, you basically covered, yes, I do love school. I've had to cut myself off from going back to school because I'm a forever learner. My husband has told me, you're obsessed with work. I don't know if it's a bad thing, but maybe all the debt that I have. It's maybe a bad thing. So, you nailed it. And for a long time, I was searching for the thing that would tie all of these things together for me. I was always very passionate about women's health and integrative medicine. And the jobs that I chose to take on before going back to school, it was always centered around well-being or acupuncture or herbal medicine. And once I found the mentor that I have now, who is the one who helped kind of usher me into doing more of this Mayan abdominal healing or womb healing, that's when I felt like it finally clicked. It felt like it took me forever, 37 years to figure it out, but I feel like I've arrived to a place where I'm like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be right now. And so it feels really good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that you are a really beautiful example of somebody who just kind of went for whatever felt right at the time. And it's all perfect because it all led you exactly to where you're meant to be. And I know that when I am talking to you, I can just feel that this is such a zone of genius for you. And it's so much deeper than the things that you've learned in this lifetime, that this is just a part of your genetics, your soul. It's just been something you've been doing a couple times, right? You were a really beautiful support for me when I was pregnant and then after I experienced my miscarriage. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for that because it was a really difficult time and I had a really hard time knowing where to turn or who even to talk to. There's a lot of misinformation out there and also just a huge lack of information. I do care very much about looking at things through a holistic lens and also through a spiritual lens. And I just didn't know where to go for support. And I reached out to you and you gave me such beautiful support and advice. And you walked with me step by step through that experience. And when I was in this connected space with you, I was like, wow, she's so doing what she's meant to do here. That it just felt so grounded and ancient the way that you supported me and walked with me through that. And so if you could kind of go back a little bit and share how you found your way into the space that you're in now, I would love to share that part of your journey.
No, I thank you for bringing that experience up. I know that was such a intense time in your life. And, one thing that, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation or just a lot of information that sometimes we don't know where to turn. And I think that a lot of the times we as humans with, whether we have wounds or not, regardless of what's kind of happening for us when we have a loss or experience a loss, a lot of the times we're just kind of left feeling like there's something that I know that needs to happen for me to feel centered and grounded again, but you might not know what that is. And so this work is just so powerful because it really helps to provide that safe space for someone to actually be, heard. And someone can, you know, have that conversation of like, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling disconnected? Why do I feel like there's something missing in my body? Or, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's just really powerful. And the work that I do now, it's funny because I've always been interested in it. Even as a child, I remember my
Mm.
grandmother, she was the one who, not even through teaching me, but it was more of showing by example or teaching by example. I
Mhm.
remember, waking up and feeling her next to me, saying prayers or using herbs to like help bring me back to, health. I remember, my other grandmother, she would do womb massage on me, but even it wasn't for pregnancy, it was for digestion. And
Mm.
it's all been embedded into my culture and into my life that it just felt natural and it felt very much like it didn't feel foreign. You know what I mean? And so it felt very much like I was stepping into the work of my ancestors and I was stepping into the
Mm.
work that maybe I had done previously in another life. And it just it just clicked. So I think one of the ways that opened up for me or that path opened was through working with cacao and connecting back to the
Mm.
land and connecting back to
Wow.
the farmers and the people who produce this beautiful medicine where my family's from. My ancestry is Guatemalan and Mayan, and so to know that this is medicine from my ancestors, it's just so powerful. And I it's funny because I've always had moments in with ancestral medicine. So like for example, with acupuncture, I've had moments when I would go into an acupuncture session and I would have like visions or I would have like I could see angels.
Wow.
Like I could see like I don't it was just it's just been powerful to be in that healing space and to see guides and to hear voices and to be told like, okay, this is you're on the right path. And so I've always had experiences like that, but I had not experienced it with cacao until I just dove right in. And now that I'm like in the space of healing for my ancestry, I'm like, oh, okay, it all makes sense. Like, I feel like I'm finally piecing the puzzle pieces together. So,
Mm. Yeah. And that's where you described this. And I feel like it was almost like a coming home, like for your soul. Like, you already knew that this was the work that you were meant to do. You just kind of had to remember that that's like
yes.
what you're here to do. So it's kind of like, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And I know that now you have a couple different offerings going on. And so I am kind of curious, like, what did you start with? How did that lead you to this? How did that lead you to the next thing? Because for people who don't know, Jen actually has her own cacao brand that you can purchase, and also offers healing oils as well as the in person work that she does as well. And then I see you have been leading a lot of circles and retreats and things like that. And so I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I would love to do all of that, but like, I don't even know where to start. So if you could just share a little bit about your journey and your path.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey started with, actually, it's funny because I started working for an acupuncture clinic years ago. I was in Boston and I started working for this clinic as a manager. And I was just surrounded by healers and herbal doctors. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
soaking it all in. And that was my, I guess, introduction to,
Yeah.
that type of healing medicine. That was back in like 2007 or 2008. I can't remember exactly, but that was around that time. And around then, I had already finished, I had already gone to college, and I, was for sociology. I was really into like the sociology of medicine. I was so passionate about women's health, but I didn't know, where to go from there. And I found the program through Suffolk University in Boston. And that program was only around for a few years, but it was a women's health program, and it was a master's degree. So it's similar to like a public health program. And it was,
Mm.
I think, the only one in all of the country. We only had like maybe, I want to say like maybe 75 graduates.
Wow.
Because
That was, I honestly, when I was like reading your bio, I was like, I did not know that this was a thing. But
Yeah.
also, like, leave it to Jen to like magically find like
it.
the one program in the freaking country, like in that, like, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It was serendipitous. And I did the program. I completed it, met so many amazing, women who were also in the program. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, I have a degree in sociology. I'm really passionate about women's health, but I'm not doing anything with this. I don't know what to do. I was in the health field. I was also working for like a hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital around that time, and, doing administrative stuff. But I was like, it doesn't feel like I don't, this is monotonous. Like I can do it, I can be successful at it, but I don't feel like I'm supposed to be doing this. That led me into having this major health decline.
Oh, interesting. I actually did not know this part of
Yeah.
your story.
This is a huge, like, a big part of the reason why I think where I am now is because of this story.
Yeah.
And that
I can definitely relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, I was 25 and I'd just gotten married. I was in the process of just finishing school, and I was working full time. I was in school full time. I had just recently been married, and all of a sudden my body just like shut down, and my thyroid decided to just kick the bucket, basically. And I remember like having chronic infections, chronic fatigue, chronic, just like constant. I like
Wow.
every month I would just have some kind of infection. I would have some kind of something that was just debilitating. Like I would go to work and I would have to end up in the bathroom, or I would have to end up making a doctor's appointment because I couldn't function,
Yeah.
and I was 25. And so finally my boss at the time, she was like, you've tried acupuncture, you've tried herbs, like, why don't you go to a functional medicine doctor? And I was like, okay. And so this was like around maybe 2010, 2011, around that time. So I went to this functional doctor, and again, leave it to Boston. Boston is like, amazing with all their medical advances and whatnot, and the doctors. And this doctor was like, how are you still alive? Like, how are you moving? And I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I just have to, like, I have to work. I have to go to school. I have to, do all the things. And he was like, your thyroid is basically like chugging along. Like it's basically like gone. Like it's smoking. It's gone. I was like, I don't know what that means. And he was like, have you been trying to get pregnant? And I said, eventually I want to get pregnant. I just got married, but we're not like thinking about children. And he was like, okay. And he said, I would highly recommend that you don't get pregnant, or like
ever.
And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, the likelihood of you being able to get pregnant and sustaining a life is slim. Like you will likely have a miscarriage. And I was like, that was so shocking to me, because I was like, what? I was 25, newly married, healthy, what I thought was healthy, but I had just recently gotten off birth control, and I started to unravel, like getting off of birth control started to unravel this long history of hormonal issues that I had been experiencing since I was 13. I had never had regular periods or anything like that. And so that was something that I had to be on because I needed to have regular periods. And so long story short, once I got off of birth control, I hit this wall of depression and anxiety. And I quit my job. I took like a whole month or 2 months off, and I just sat in a corner in our apartment in Boston, and I just wept like all day because my body was like, like first of all, it was like my thyroid wasn't working, like the medication was still, in the process of like kicking in, so I was having all of these emotions. Finally, my body started to like respond to the medication. I was told
Yeah.
you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life, blah, 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 blah. I started doing all this research on hypothyroidism. I started doing, there was nothing at the time. There were no blogs. There were no, there was
Yeah,
nothing.
like we're going like back in time here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would like Google stuff, and like I came up with like one book, and I found one book at the Boston Public Library on thyroid issues. And it was like a natural way to heal your thyroid or something like that. I can't remember. But it was one single book every single book in the library that I could find. And I devoured that book, and I was like, I need to do something. Like I felt so responsible to fix, this thing that was happening to me. And so that is how my journey began with integrative medicine and health sciences and women's health. I had already had the background, but then something happened to me where I had to take the initiative to start to heal myself and find ways, and also figure out, why am I having these chronic infections, right? So I decided at that point, I was like, I remember talking to my husband. I was like, maybe I should start a blog about this. Maybe I should start talking about this, because I don't know who else is going through, chronic infections and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I remember like starting like a very small blog and like typing and like journaling about this stuff. And then I went back to school, and I decided that I was like, you know what, if I'm going to go back to school, I already have a master's. I'm going to go for a PhD. Why? Because I'm an overachiever. And so that actually, I ended up deciding later that I did not want to finish a PhD, that really I just wanted to do coaching, and I wanted to finish with a second master's. I was like, well, I'm already in school. Might as well finish with a second master's degree. I'm already paying for it. So finished the master's degree with integrative medicine and health sciences. And then along with that, I did the coaching certification and the mindfulness training and all of that. So that was when I went back to school. I was like, oh my gosh, there are people who get it. Like there are people who, I'm surrounded by therapists. I'm surrounded by doctors. I'm surrounded by people who like, I want to be these people, And so that became my, the thing that fed my desire to continue this healing process. I remember going into a class where it was just all about learning and teaching about guided meditation and guided visualizations and whatnot. And I remember going into like a shamanic journey with my instructor, because they were literally teaching shamanic drumming. And so we did a shamanic drumming session in class. And I remember having such a powerful vision of seeing my grandmother, my grandmother passed away years ago when I was very little. And I remember seeing her, and I stood in front of her, and she was empty-handed. And then I looked away, and I looked back at her. She was standing there, but then she was standing with a child. She was standing with a little boy, and he looked exactly like my son, my firstborn. My son wasn't born until 2017. So this was like 2012, I think, around that time is when I had this vision. And I remember.
Did you know?
At that point, I was like, that's
that little
my son.
boy, you knew. Yeah.
At that point, I was like, I told my husband, I told my father, I was like, I had this vision. And anyway, that I ended up, long story short, I started implementing these practices, mindfulness. I started practicing hypnosis. I started practicing guided visualizations. I started doing all of the work, not just because I was going to be doing it, but because I wanted to heal, and like I wanted to like see, what does this actually do? And the chronic infections started to disappear. You know, and I don't want to say that, I don't say that so lightly because it's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
that's,
Hmm.
that was when I started to shift my mentality, and when I started to
Yeah.
shift the way that I saw this illness. Instead of it like attacking me, I was like, okay, there is work that needs to be done. How can I embrace what is happening, this pain that I'm having? How can I change my thoughts around this? And like,
Mm.
can I see that there is the possibility for healing within me? And can I believe
Yes.
that? Right. And so, oh my gosh, I remember many times sitting on the toilet, like with this infection or like an infection, and like being in chronic pain and just being like doubled over, like thinking, I'm going to go to work today. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You know, looking for all of these natural herbal remedies. And then finally it clicking for me. And like, I remember going into meditation as I'm sitting on the toilet, and
Yep. Yeah.
I'm like, is trying to zen out. And that's when I started to notice like my body started to respond, and my body started to like relax, and my pelvic floor started to relax. And I started practicing that every day, every day, every day, as much as I could. My husband would come home and I'd be laying on the couch, like meditating, or I'd be like on the floor, doing yoga or something. And he just kind of like held that space for me. Like he didn't judge. He didn't, he was just like, that's Jenn needs to do what she needs to do. And so anyway, it's been, I mean, I've had like infection, like flare ups, since then, but it hasn't been like, I don't go into a flare up now where I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Now it's more like, okay, I have resources, I have tools, I know how to handle this. And also like, I'm not going to let this take over my day and take over like how I can respond to, what I can do for the rest of the day. Again, maybe I need to rest, and maybe I just need to, take some herbal remedies and to help me kind of like feel better. And like, maybe this is a reminder that I need to drink more water. Maybe this is a reminder to like cut out some sugar, those sorts of things. And so now I can see like, it's like I, my paradigm has completely shifted, to be able to like, my friend calls it quantum jumping, where
Mm.
you can jump from like where you were, right, to like the story that you were believing, to like a completely different dimension. And so that's how I feel like I finally have like seen like what is possible. And that's the same with my children. I always believed that I couldn't be pregnant, and I believed for a long time, that I would never be able to sustain a life. And then when I saw that vision that I had of my grandmother with my son, I was like, oh, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So, and then when I got pregnant after lots of, you know, doctor visits and whatnot, when I ended up getting pregnant, I knew, like, the moment I got pregnant, I said to my husband, it's a boy. Like, I know exactly who he is. And lo
I've
and
met him
I
before.
knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him already. And my husband was like, are you sure, Jen? Like, are you? And he, at this point, he knows that, there's the intuition that I, use to give me lots of information. And so he was like, all right. And then next thing you know, it was a boy. When he was born, I was like, that's his little face. And, so yeah, that is I guess that's the journey so far, to how I got to where I am, today. And it's all
Mm.
kind of led to this place of holding space for women who are also dealing with those feelings, or maybe chronic infections, or womb wounds, things that stories that we've held on to, that we believe, or we don't even realize we're believing, um, and being able to say, you know what, I'm holding this space for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is so powerful. And I know that for me, I I have the belief that part of my journey in terms of, chronic illness, it was absolutely necessary for me to be on the path and the journey that I am today. And it's something that I wouldn't change for anything. And I actually also remember having that moment where I just came into relationship with my body where I'm like, dude, like we're on the same team here. Like it's not you against me. Like we're on the same team, and really trying to love on my body and be like, hey, like, okay, like, what are you trying to tell me? What do you need? Like, what's going on here? And also, learning about mindfulness, guided visualization, meditation, all of that kind of stuff, affirmations, speaking kindness, to your body. And I had a moment where I was like, if I have to go through this, I'm going to choose to go through this well. And I don't have control over much of this, but I do have control over how I exist in relationship to it.
Oh,
And that
absolutely.
was such a game changer for me. And much like you, I was also told that I could not get pregnant naturally. I had multiple surgeries for endometriosis, PCOS, so on and so forth. And the one related to chronic Lyme was the thing that had caused, all of that. And my surgeon, I remember I was like waking up from anesthesia. I'm like not even like awake. And he was like, yeah, if you ever want to have kids, you're definitely going to have to do IVF. So like start saving now because your fallopian tubes are like shot. Like there is nothing's going to get down. And I just kind of took that as facts. Like for the longest time, I was like, oh, okay. Like, and so it was a surprise when I got pregnant with my fiance. And I was overjoyed about it because even though I did miscarry, just the fact that I was able to naturally conceive a child, that just shattered that narrative for me. And I was like, okay, that was somebody's opinion. That was not truth. That was not fact. That was not anything. That was somebody else's opinion. And I know that my body is capable of miracles and my body is capable of divine healing. And my body is perfect as long as I give her the support and nourishment that she needs. And that was where I kind of just like went since that experience, since the miscarriage, I've just really gone back into the foods that I eat, the supplements I'm taking. I'm a big believer in ozone therapy. I've been able to connect with, practitioners near me that are doing more of the herbal medicine, a functional doctor, so on and so forth. So, and that's one thing where if anyone is listening to this and there's something that has been told to you, whether it's a medical narrative or a personality narrative or a career narrative, that you're just like, no, I don't want that to be true. It doesn't have to be.
No,
it absolutely doesn't have to be. You get to decide.
Absolutely. Sadly, there's just so many lies, I think, that we believe, that are put on us that may even, and I tell this to lots of to my clients, there's a reason why we have science. Like I truly believe in science. Like I truly believe that there is.
Yeah, you literally got all the degrees.
yeah, like it's helpful, right? But then there's a piece to this type of care that is missing, and that is just empathy, and like knowing how to speak to someone when they're coming out of surgery, or when they've just had a very shocking or very surprising, diagnosis. And so that's that there's just hundreds of stories. Like everyone who I work with, like there's something that they are told, that they believe, oh, my doctor said this and my doctor said, and, it's not my job to, be like, well, they're lying, I can't, I'm not going to say that, but at the same time, like, holding that for you and like, I'm sorry that was what happened, and being able to usher them into a space where they can acknowledge, like, what, can I rebuild this trust in my body? Right. And because I think a lot of the times when we're dealing with chronic illness or chronic pain, even is this just distrust in our body. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think, it's so important to have hope. And it's also so important to be in that space of possibility. But it is difficult when day in and day out, you are met with, pain, you're met with another diagnosis, you're met with another thing that is quote unquote going wrong. It is very, very difficult to hold on to hope and to hold on to possibility. And I think that is where being able to anchor yourself into, daily rituals, practices, mindfulness, yoga. Even like when I'm taking my supplements, I don't just like swallow a bunch of pills. I'm like, oh, okay, like I know what this is and I know why I'm taking it, and I take it and I visualize it going into my body and like doing that thing that it's, intended to help with. Everything that I do is very, very intentional. I infuse a lot of energy into my healing practices, into like my care of self. Even if, I'm like eating something I'm quote unquote not supposed to be eating, I'm like, you know what, body, like we are so in the mood for this not gluten-free chocolate cake right now. And so like,
no
it is
judgment.
not going to harm us. It is going to be like most delicious, nourishing chocolate cake ever. And that's because I really have come to believe in the power of energy and the power of possibility and the power of us allowing ourselves to be empowered to know that all of this is a negotiation, essentially. Like all of this is us kind of getting to decide how we want to interact with the energies around us, including, what is going on and around our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just like the not having the shame of, like you said, the, non-gluten-free chocolate cake. Like if you want to have it, what's going to be more
unless you have celiac, please don't do that if you have celiac.
Right.
I don't have celiac, just an intolerance.
But like what's going to be more harmful? Is it going to be like you shaming yourself for, having it? Or is it going to be like you enjoying that piece of cake and like feeling satisfied, and knowing that I had that and it was delicious and now I can move on with my life and not beating yourself up over, that you had the piece of cake, I feel like it goes for everything.
Speaking of chocolate deliciousness, I would love if you could share a little bit about cacao and how you have kind of experienced your relationship with the cacao and decided to take on having your own, brand essentially with the cacao. And I know that also for you, the sourcing and the mission behind that is really important because again, like it's an energy, it's a medicine, it is a plant, it is a way of life, it is a culture, it is all of these things. And I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's like healthy hot chocolate. And I'm like, no, not exactly.
I mean, if you're going to, they're going to minimize it to that, then, it's fine. But,
okay. All right. Like,
whatever makes you feel better.
However you get to let her in, right?
Exactly. Cacao is such a beautiful plant medicine. I equate it to just helping you open the places in your body that need that love and attention. And so anytime that I have cacao, it doesn't matter how often I have it, how much I've had of it, I always cry because it's just so beautiful. Like I sit with it and like I just start weeping because I'm just so thankful for this medicine that we get to have, that is just has been shared through the farmers and the like you said, as you were describing the cacao, the main reason why I source the way that I do is because it's so important to be able to give back to the community who creates it and to the farmers and to the families to help develop and to help provide, funds, the money that they deserve, for the work that they have done, and so, I try to, as much as possible, to really be able to source it from the farmers who honor and respect the land that my ancestors are from. And so it feels so beautiful to be able to know where it comes from and which farms they come from and who's working the land. I don't know if
you see, but I have it right there.
Oh, you do? Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah. Can you see?
I think it's maybe a little bit of
hold on
your camera a little bit. Oh, yes.
See right there. This is Jenn's brand. I have the big old bag, but it lives on my altar, so it's kind of like always part of getting like charged up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I have a friend who is local to Austin and she sources the cacao for me. And I think she's bought so many bags. I told her, I said, I only have like 2 bags of cacao, the blend left. She's like, save them for me. I want them. I was like, girl, you're gonna have to buy them before someone snatches them up. So, but yeah, it's it's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, such a gift.
Yeah, that was and I shared this a little bit on the podcast with an earlier guest, but my first experience with cacao, I was not prepared at all. I was like, oh yay, like okay, like yummy, healthy hot chocolate, right? And I got my cup and before I even took a sip, I'm just smelling the cacao and just
Mhm.
floodgates just pouring out of, and like they were the most cleansing tears. I think they were like, I don't know. It was like they were like a different
Yeah.
flavor of tear. I
Yeah.
don't really know how else to
Yes.
describe it, but they were like hot and like full of energy. Like
Yes.
these tears that were coming out of my eyes. I had never cried like that ever in my life. This is going to sound weird, but my tears are usually like, I don't know, body temperature or cold. Like these tears were hot. Like
Yeah.
they were hot tears and like just streaming down my face. And it was odd because I wasn't like crying, but my eyes were crying.
Yes.
And it was like this emotion was just coming out of my eyes. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just trying to breathe as much as I can to allow it to just continue going. And I was in a circle the first time I experienced cacao. So luckily I was with other people. There was, two facilitators there. And they were like, talking, they're like, yep, this is normal. This is natural. It's okay. Like, let it go. And I just remember feeling like my chest was getting cracked open.
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
didn't even realize how much weight was sitting on top of my heart. And then the
Mhm.
cacao just kind of like was like, tick, 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 and then just like,
Yes.
like cracked it open. And then it was open and everything that had been kind of suppressed by all of this heaviness was able to like come forth and be released and let go of in such it was powerful and gentle at the same time.
Yes.
And so like ever since then, like me and cacao we're friends
You're
now.
buddies.
She my friend. Like I was like, wow.
It's yeah, that is the best description. It's powerful yet gentle and also shocking, like how easily like you can just
Oh yeah. Like I just smelled it. I like
Yes.
didn't do anything.
Yes.
Like there was no yoga, there was no chanting, there was no nothing. I literally just received my cup and was smelling it and just
Yep.
that quick.
That is exactly how it feels to me as well. It's yeah. People I think don't expect it to be so so gentle and yet so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was very, very, very special. And the other thing that I, really wanted to connect with you on a little bit, I think that more people are starting to hear more about Mayan abdominal work, or like sometimes people call it womb work. Can you kind of just for the listeners explain a little bit about that, the origin, where it comes from, and then maybe also how to either learn about this for themselves if they're practitioners or, find a practitioner?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different, I guess, schools of learning. It's actually it's ancestral work, right? And so there are curanderas, like healers, womb healers who practice, who maybe don't have like a specific training, like they've just learned it from family and it gets passed down like from
Okay.
community to community or relative to relative, and it's usually passed down from the matriarch, right? So like the woman in the family, like the grandmother and then the mother. And so it's interesting because this womb work, it's not just tied to Mayan culture, the Mayan lineage, but there are many other cultures that also practice some type of womb healing. Specifically with Mayan, though, the lineage that I learned it from, it's a blend because it comes from my family,
Okay.
right? So I have some education about it through my family, but then I trained and work with Arvigo. So Arvigo is the main, the training, I suppose, that the umbrella that holds these practitioners. And there's several other ones. So the lineage comes from a man a man named Don Eligio Panti, and he is from Belize, but he's passed. He died in, I think, the 90s. And that the work that he did was then passed on to uh, his community. But his main goal for the people who took on this training was that it would always go back to who it belongs to. So it goes back to the Mayans. It goes back to the community. And so the training that I did, I trained actually under a amazing woman who is actually from New Zealand, who learned it from Rosita Arvigo, who learned it from Don Eligio Panti, who is from Belize. And so my mentor, she's not Mayan, but she is Bedouin. So she is from like Dubai, and she's Arab, and so that's her her culture. But yeah, I get to work on people through this program and continue learning and share it eventually, be able to provide, training for people at some point so that they can continue doing this work for themselves in their own home. Yeah. And it's primarily focused on the womb, right? And so we work on between the raw line and your pubic bone. And so that's the area where we are working, and do a series of movements across the abdomen and across the womb to support digestion, but then also support fertility, and not just fertility, but like people who might have endometriosis or, PCOS, cysts, things like that, fibroids, all that. And so the goal is to help to provide some blood flow to those areas that may be needing some additional support, and also to help realign the uterus. So the uterus will sometimes go out of alignment, and this can happen through, from pregnancy or from some kind of injury or, sexual assault, different types of things that can happen. Also just like emotional stuff that can, when we have a tight pelvic floor, the uterus and the organs can shift. And so the work of Mayan abdominal belly care or massage, whatever you want to call it, is to help bring those organs back into placement or back into where they belong, so that you can have a natural flow of energy to move out of the body. And so that supports digestion. And, that a lot of people who come into session, they might say, I have an intolerance to gluten, and anytime I feel bloated. And so then I'll work on them, and then, they start to notice a difference in the way that when they eat, like they might be able to tolerate, different foods better, because there's more flow, and whatever was stuck energetically, but also then physically, whatever was stuck there has been moving out. And so lots of people will have like really solid bowel movement after coming to see me, and even might have, emotional, blockages get unstuck. So some people will just report, the next day or a few days later that they have significant dreams, or they might even notice that they've just been weeping all day, like not sure why, or, women who've had miscarriages, or who've had, termination, maybe an intentional termination, like being able to like move that energy out, to help them come back to feeling like themselves and feeling more grounded. And then, the work that I do it's interesting because I do often get energetic messages as I'm working with people. And so, as I'm sure you know this, because you also work with energy as well. And so, I touch the bell, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, Michael is here. I'm not sure who Michael is, but he wants to say hi, So it's really interesting how it all just kind of, you tap into the energy, and then all of a sudden it's like you know, the doors, fling wide open, and
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
yeah, for people who are curious about, doing this work, there's lots of different practitioners, available. But if you're like wanting to find one, near you, you could very easily just go to the RVGo website and search under practitioners and find one in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, when we'll definitely link that in the show notes as well. And I think that that's where, it is a really powerful piece to touch on because our emotions, our lived experiences, our, energy, it's not just in our brain. And this is where I feel like you and I kind of take that as like, oh yeah, of course, like our body stores things, but this is not common knowledge,
Right.
not like everybody knows this, where our body, our cells, our organs, our tissue, everything about our bodies is just encoded with, not only like our lived experience in this lifetime, but if you're somebody who um is in alignment with believing in past lives and things like that, or intergenerational trauma, epigenetics, like all of these things, our body stores it all because our body is trying to figure out the best way to survive this lifetime. So it's going to hold on to every tiny little piece of information that it
Mm-hmm.
gathers.
Mm-hmm.
And that information can either be helping us or actually harming us. It can be, kind of
Mm-hmm.
putting us in alignment to move forward or keeping us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where our bodies are amazing, but they're wired to do one thing, and that's survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your body feels unsafe or it's kind of in that fight or flight space, or there's a lot of stagnation, right? Because it just kind of like got stuck somewhere because of, loss or medical trauma or, like you said, sexual assault. The body just is like, okay, we're just going to stay here. We're just going to keep it locked down because
Mm-hmm.
this is how we're going to stay safe. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so amazing that our bodies are doing that because it's our bodies trying to do
Mm-hmm.
their job, but that might not be serving you. It might not actually be helping you to live a long, healthy life. It might not be helping you to achieve your goals. If you are, looking at kind of clearing PCOS, endometriosis, potentially increasing fertility, and your body's in a state of survival, guess what? Like your body can't thrive and heal and excel and accept new, change if it's kind of in this like, we got to fight, mentality. And when we have that injury, it is so impactful. Again, this can be physical, mental, medical, emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are going to do the work to be able to clear it, that is going to oftentimes take somebody, a practitioner, being able to come in and not only physically, but energetically be able to help the body come into that feeling of safety and security and knowing it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
release and let this go. And that's where we see, all these benefits for digestion and elimination and, detoxification as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
for people who are menstruating humans, like there is a lot of our menstrual cycle that is actually our bodies releasing and letting go and like detoxifying. So if there's part of that that's stagnant and doesn't happen fully and completely, you're hanging on to a bunch of toxic shit like month after month after month after month. And like,
Yep.
if you think that's not going to like build up over time and cause some problems, you are sorely mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, this isn't to say, I mean, there's many people, who have had, traumatic experiences, or they grew up with trauma, I just, this isn't to negate, that it can't happen, but you still can't, of course you can still get pregnant, without this or without addressing traumatic experiences. It happens all the time. Um, and it's not to negate, the different stories and the different journeys, right? But I think that sometimes what happens, and you could even, think back on I could even just use my mother as an example, she had lots of things to kind of navigate through, and she's, well into her, late 50s at this point. And she's just now having this moment of like, oh, my body is like coming to a place of like, I need healing, or like I need something that maybe I never was able to give it, and, it might take people, a little bit of time to get to where they can see that there is generational trauma or, generational cycles that haven't been broken, and so it's everyone's journey is different. And so
Mhm.
I just want to, say that, it's not that you have to have, a connection to the mother wound or like break the mother wound or work with the mother wound or, womb wounds or what have you. It might not even be that. You might just, maybe you're able to get pregnant right now easily, and that's great. And, whenever you're ready to work with, supporting your nervous system, or like once you get there and you need support, like there's lots of resources available.
Yeah. And I really love that you took a moment to highlight that, Jen, because everybody has a different path. Everybody is walking a different path. And it's not to say that, even like this lifetime is necessarily going to be the lifetime where like that healing is going to happen. And this is just, I think, one of those pieces where if you're hearing Jenn talk about this and you're feeling a pull towards it, or you're feeling a call towards it, or you're thinking like, oh wow, like that sounds really amazing. That's something that I would invite you to listen to and lean into. If you're kind of like, okay, that's cool, like whatever, that's fine too. There's really no right or wrong. And I think that's also where it's so amazing. And one of the things I love about being able to bring this podcast to people is that there's so many different ways to heal. We have so many different ways that we can engage in healing practices. Maybe for someone it's, breath work, for someone it's yoga, for someone it's, doing the belly care massage, right? Like everybody can have different paths to be able to align with, their highest self and the type of healing that it is for them to call in this lifetime. And I also kind of want to, take a moment to just touch on one of the things that I see you really emphasize, being a caregiver and a care provider, and you're now a mother of not just one, but two children, right? What are some of the kind of like takeaway points that you could give for people in terms of just practicing healing and self-care in a very accessible way in their day-to-day lives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not perfect, right? I think that as healers, we all can use our own reminders, because we can very easily
Yep.
get sucked
I'm
into,
with you. Yep.
supporting other people
Mm-hmm.
and, supporting our families. And I think one thing about this season in my life is that, I have done the work, right? And so now it's like, okay, my life has shifted a little bit, and how can I practice this, what I preach? How can I practice this in a way that actually makes sense for me? And, the thing that I like to do, or like, well, not even like to do, but like I like to share with folks, is that it doesn't have to be, meditate for an hour or meditate for 30 minutes. You could very easily like not even meditate. Like meditation is not for everyone, right? Or yoga isn't for everyone. I think that there's lots of resources that you can try, and you can decide, I tried it. It was okay. It wasn't for me. I loved it. You have the opportunity to make your own, what you want, what your self-care routine or whatever, soul care routine, whatever that looks like for you. For me, what works is breath work.
Mm.
Breath work is the main thing that I always kind of go back to. And that's even if it's just taking 3 breaths, even if it's just, having a moment of quiet, as I'm washing dishes or as I'm washing my hair, if I'm able to take even 10 minutes to take a shower, without even if my kids come over, like I will say, hey babe, like go talk to your dad. I'm taking some time for myself,
Yeah.
and thankfully like they get the point, but I know that it looks different when you are a caretaker or a parent, or you don't have children, or you've decided not to have children. You know what I mean? Like it looks different for everyone. And
Mhm.
knowing that it's going to evolve and change, and being okay with that, I think is one of the keys to just being able to like not hold on so tightly to things or to practices that you feel like, oh, but I miss my meditation. Oh, I miss my thing, or I miss this thing, or I miss yoga. And like, we're holding on to these things so tightly. And then like, we then forget to actually like release that and be like, you know what, it didn't happen today, but you know what, maybe I can find a little bit of rest by just taking like a minute or two to just go outside and take in the sun, or, you know, maybe do a little bit of ground, or, you know, maybe I just snuggle with my kid today and like, you know, do some co-regulation together. You know, I just feel like it can be so powerful to find a little something, even if the thing that you normally gravitate towards isn't accessible or available at that time.
Oh, I love that takeaway. I think that is a really beautiful reminder. And I think especially, again, for people who are in, you know, service-based positions. And this, you know, means maybe you're a therapist, maybe you're a coach, maybe you're a healer, you know, but even just, you know, being a caregiver, whether you are a parent or a partner, or maybe you are, you know, helping to care for the people who used to be your caregivers, most of us, you know, really do find ourselves in a position where we're trying to pour out of an empty cup. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a whole big ritual to be able to refill it. Even if you can't refill it, you know, 100%, adding a couple drops is better than adding no drops.
Exactly.
And I think that is such a beautiful takeaway. And so, Jenn, for the people who would love to get cacao from you, get healing oils from you, how do they connect with you? How can people work with you? How can they buy stuff from you? Like, you kind of got a little bit of everything going on. So give us all the details.
Yeah, thanks, Amber. You can find me if you are on social media. You can find me at Seiba Wellness, and that's CEIBA_wellness. That's my Instagram handle, and I don't really use Facebook that much, but I do have a Facebook page. You can also find me on my website, and that's just at www.seibawellness.com. Again, CEIBA wellness.com, and then just jump into the shop. That's where you can find all the products that we've kind of discussed today. And then also you can click on the womb healing page or cacao page and just scroll down. You'll find a little button right there to it will direct you straight to my booking page. If you're local to Texas or San Antonio or Austin, that's where you can book. And if not, you know, maybe we'll find each other, you know, someplace if I'm ever traveling.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you've been getting around a little bit. Yeah. There's been some different, like, you know, retreats that you've been at and things like that. So what's upcoming in terms of like retreats or any offerings that you have out of state?
Yeah, I've got I'll be flying to Taos, New Mexico in June. So I'll be there for a few days leading a cacao and koya little like pay what you can gathering. And so it's just like a weekend long thing. So you can find that on my Instagram page. It'll be in my newsletter this month. So you can also sign up for my newsletter, and that's where I kind of send all the details for the month.
Okay, good. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenn. This was a really beautiful conversation. I appreciate you sharing your story, your wisdom, and also some really practical tips for self-care and wellness. It was so much fun having you on today.
Likewise. So good, Amber. Always so good to connect.
There you have it. Another episode of the Sacred Leadership Podcast on the books. I hope your time spent here served you and nourished you. Join us every Tuesday for more honest conversations and powerful insights. Remember, exceptional leaders share the wealth. Send this episode to someone who would benefit, leave a review to let others know about the show, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Talk to you soon.